This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Scott, Tony, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hi, glad to be here today.
Well, Tony, let's start with you. Pretty exciting stuff. It's getting down to a short period of time before the actual event. Tell our audience a little bit about the Innovation Awards and maybe what the purpose of it all is.
No, I absolutely appreciate the opportunity, Frank, and Scott and I are happy to represent TAG's Data Science and Analytics Society. The Innovation Awards is our signature event. It's the event that we close out the year, and it's an event that's really gained a lot of popularity over the last several years. This society has evolved too, which is pretty exciting. If you look at where we were a year ago, we had a different name. We were the Business Intelligence and Analytics Society, and just with the evolution in this space, we made a change in the name of our society as well as in our mission to be a little bit more forward-looking in terms of the data domain. So this will be actually the first year that the Innovation Awards is going to go ahead and take place under our new name, and so we're pretty excited about that. And so the purpose is we wanted to create we've created a platform for a diverse group of Georgia-based organizations to showcase how they've leveraged innovative solutions in data science and analytics, and specifically talk about or showcase some of the IRI that they've created for their organizations, for their customers, and in some cases how they've improved people's lives. So it's not always about generating revenue and the customer experience. Some of the companies and some of the finalists are actually doing things with data science and analytics to save lives and improve people's lives. So it's exciting on multiple fronts. It's also a great opportunity for organizations to not just stay in tune with what's going on in Georgia, but if there's a struggle for talent out there. This is a great opportunity for individuals that are interested in networking with some of the top data science professionals in Atlanta. It gives them a chance to do so. We have members of our board that are in academia that are, the experts in the field, and we'll have, we will actually have attendees from Georgia Tech and Kennesaw State, PhD and master's program students. So it's a great opportunity for those organizations that are struggling to find that talent as well.
Well, it's more than even the recognition, which is obviously important. You're talking about a sector that almost embraces every other sector of technology, because I think we're all going to be impacted. I think at one point we might have mentioned that I'm trying to think, maybe the cloud can be the embracer of all things, I guess, to a degree. But the bottom line of it is that if it isn't about information, analytics, interpretation, I can remember structured and unstructured data, and now we're moving into artificial intelligence and virtual reality. I mean, the amazement of what can be profiled and the kind of services and information that can stem from this. I can't think of any business or any sector that's not impacted. Scott, to follow up a little bit on what Tony was talking about, are innovation, business transformations, and ROI keeping in line with the technical innovations in data science, or do we have doctors looking for patients?
That's a really interesting question, and the answer is it's both, right? And so one of the things that I really enjoyed about, the process of, working with the companies on the Innovation Awards is that we were able to sort of screen out those cases where there was a doctor looking for patient, as you say, right? Because our criteria, right, were equally weighted between, business transformation, revenue growth, quality of life, in conjunction with the more technical aspects of how we judge a solution. And one of the things that I've learned after working with companies on several continents, actually, on figuring out sort of how do we define the specific business value we're trying to generate, and what specific business processes are going to be improved through the injection of big analytics or advanced analytics. Then we kind of get through the how do we design the data pipeline and the analytic processing that's going to be required to deliver that insight into the specific business process.
Well, maybe cover a little bit, if you will, Scott, especially from your perspective. Tell our audience a little bit about what you do, all joking aside, but your day job. I know you're on the board with the society, but because what I want to do is ask from your perspective, how about some trends, anything that you've observed, not only in the day-to-day operations of what you do, but also in the actual innovation award contenders process?
Sure. So I work with Cox Communications based here in Atlanta. I run a group of analysts and big data practitioners, data science practitioners is the term now, where we are focused on gathering lots of data from the broadband service network that we provide in many parts of the country, and effectively reading that machine data to understand how the way the broadband service is experienced down to the customer's home is actually affected and in some cases interrupted by what we're seeing in the machine data, right? And so what we do with that information is then, whether it's an automated process or sort of a field technician intervention, we actually predict and then intervene, hopefully ahead of time, in order to prevent that bad experience from happening. Does that make sense?
It does, and I know the dynamics in the fields that you guys cover with all of the communication processes that you're engaged in. That's got to be an interesting challenge to be able to, I think the philosophers say the solution is simple, it's the implementation that gets hard.
You know what, I'm glad you mentioned that, because at the end of the day, and this is coming from a guy who's made his living, with advanced analytics, at the end of the day, if the company can't act on it, and that is implement, of course, then it's all for naught, right? In all the coolest big data applications and all the really cool machine learning models and gradient boosting and neural networks, all that really was just a fun exercise.
Well, Tony, let's go into a little bit about eHire. I think a lot of our members already know who you are and what you're involved in, but to cover that a little bit, and then a segue to what Scott was talking about, maybe give us some insight into some of the organizations that were involved in the nomination process rather than the actual finalists that are contending for the award.
Sure. So, eHire is an Atlanta-based technology staffing and recruiting firm, and we work with a diverse set of customers and help them build their technology teams, whether they need a full-time resource or a team of consultants. And so I've got the distinct honor to work with an amazing team here of account executives and recruiters. Basically at the end of the day, director of sales. I'm responsible for the customer acquisition and revenue of the company. So it's interesting what's going on in this space specifically. There's so much new technology. There's so many new methodologies, and the candidates aren't readily available. So one of the reasons I wanted to get involved with this organization is because of the unique demand for these resources. I wanted to be ingrained in the domain and learn a lot more about it. I was really impressed with the nomination process, and then the finalists that made it to the end. We had a very difficult task of going through about 25 different nominations from all types of organizations. We're talking startups. all the way up to large enterprises that are based here in Atlanta. And it was really difficult to narrow that down to 7 finalists. And Scott can attest to the fact, how difficult it was to come up with some of the winners. So, what I found most interesting in the finalists is that, yes, there were some great stories, some great solutions that addressed some very unique pains and problems. Whether it was to increase current revenue or to find new sources of revenue, or to create new customer experiences, or to use, predictive analytics to kind of predict behavior. There were some very innovative solutions that were brought to bear, but we also had a couple finalists, a few finalists, whose mission was more altruistic. I mean, it was less about generating revenue and that type of ROI. Their ROI was about saving lives and making lives people's better, leveraging this type of innovation. So, overall, like I said, we had we basically painted the canvas, from the very, very small growth startup all the way to several of the enterprises here in Atlanta that most folks are very familiar with.
I think we're going to see a benchmark in this award. Obviously, when you talk about it being the first time under the new society banner, but there'll be, I think, a benchmark, a stake in the ground as to just exactly what innovation is over the next few years, over the next decade, certainly, with all of the hybriding of all of these technologies on each other, and absolutely, when we start dealing with artificial intelligence and start getting involved in some of the other aspects of even virtual reality and augmented reality, and as it impacts decision-making and action and reaction. Scott, a lot of awards going on, a lot of talk about different kinds of awards, but put you on the spot, but is there any really key factor that separates the Innovation Awards, this particular society awards, from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, I would say that that's true, and just like our judging criteria, I think it happens in 2 different areas, right? One is, how mature is the solution in terms of its business or human impact, right? Because at the end of the day, the more value has been generated in terms of those 2 things, right, really proves to us that this is an important solution designed in such a way that it can be implemented, adopted, and generate value in the real world. Then, of course, the other side of it is, technologically speaking, is this a solution that truly is an advancement in terms of using machine learning, artificial intelligence, the latest, sort of data management technologies and so forth. So, and what was interesting is, part of why this was so difficult for us is because we did equally weight those 2 sides of the value equation, or the innovation equation. And so, we had some where, they were the most technically advanced, but maybe wasn't as mature in terms of the business model implementation, right? And then we had some maturity on the business model implementation side, but a little less advanced from a technological point of view. So, but again, these things run the gamut, and this is part of the adoption curve that we're seeing out there in the world today. And, as we kind of opened the conversation with, the question of, where are we in this sort of maturity of implementing big data analytics in the world? It's highly variable at this point.
Yeah. I think just to add on to that just a little bit, I mean, I think it's interesting to point out that, 25 nominations this year. I think we had half of that last year. I'm excited to see what's going to be. We may have to have another name change. I hope not, but I'm excited to see what next year's going to look like, because we had some really, really strong candidates this year.
Well, that brings us to.
I am as well.
It brings us to the close, Tony. Go into some specifics for our listening audience. Who should be attending, and maybe go into a little bit of the details, date and time and place.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, certainly, anybody in Atlanta who's curious about this technology, whether you're a practitioner or a service provider, anyone obviously who's a practitioner in the space, whose success depends on the advancements and innovations in this space. We expect to have a lot of the service providers. If you look at the ecosystem of service providers and big data and data analytics and how that's grown over the last 3 years, I looked at an infographic the other day, and where you had maybe a handful of providers 5 years ago. There's probably upwards of 50 now. Mm-hmm. So some of those service providers will be representative. You're going to have just all the major companies in Atlanta, all the large enterprises that are involved and have most CIOs. I mean, this is one of their top priorities, right? Is the data analytics space. We're going to have a segment of academia there. You're going to have some of the top professors from Georgia Tech and from Kennesaw State, and you're going to have graduate and PhD candidates right there. So and that's just a subsection of the folks. So it truly is an event that if you look at all the societies within the TAG ecosystem, I truly believe that our society touches every single one of them. So, I expect to see, folks from some of those other societies as well, because really what we're talking about touches just about everything related to technology these days.
TAG's Data Science and Analytics Society, both Scott and Tony are on the board. What we're alerting everyone to is the Innovation Awards. Tony, you were going to tell us the location and the time.
Absolutely. So anybody who's interested in sponsoring or registering, we certainly have some sponsorship opportunities available. Real easy. If you go to tagonline.org and pull up our society, which is a Data Science and Analytics Society, that'll take you right to the registration site, sponsorship site. Or if you go to the events page on tagonline.org, you'll see that it's listed out there, and the date is Thursday, November the 10th, 2 days after Election Day. So mark your calendar, and it's at the Westin Perimeter at 6 o'clock. So it's an evening event, and they do a great job for us. I believe this is the third year we've held it there, and we'll have a reception and cocktails, and it's going to be a great event. It's always a great event. We typically have about 250 to 300 individuals attend. So love to see everyone there.
Powerhouse Conference has always been a gathering place for a lot of the big thinkers, a lot of thought leadership, and obviously in this space, that's what it's all about. And if you think you know, you don't. And if you know you want to come and explain and share what you've experienced with your best practices and even some of the things that you're involved in as far as the vertical is concerned, hey, guys, exciting opportunity. I think one of the bigger and better events that TAG puts on every year. It's getting only bigger and better, as you're pointing out, Tony. Hey, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of what I know has got to be an extremely busy schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
It's been a pleasure,
Frank.
Thank
you very much.
So much.
Enjoyed it. Yep. Thanks.